dreams and hopes which he believed should someday be brought together to form a new way of life for people in this world. And now, as the result of so many of these older plans, the carefully laid foundations that were some of them built 3,000 and 4,000 years ago, we have come to our present emergency, an emergency which, strangely enough, seems to be really unnecessary. An emergency in which a people, educated, cultured, skillful, a people basically of good intention, have managed to bind themselves into a turmoil, into a crisis, and into a criticism. Yet we are still informed by the scriptures of old and by the mystic yearnings of the sages that this situation will not prevail against the common good, that the purpose of the great brotherhood that guides the world is that this nation shall survive. This situation will not prevail against the common good, that the purpose of the great brotherhood that guides the world is that this nation shall survive. It shall survive because it was destined, and it shall survive because that which put it in motion is stronger than anything that can be used against it. But in this moment or this time of stress and trial, it is very important that there must be a growing and enlarging realization of the essential purpose for which this nation was founded. It is no longer simply to be considered as another adventure in competition and conspiracy. Now, for a long time, we opened our gates here to emigration from other countries. The tired, the weary, the persecuted, the underprivileged came here. And gradually out of this we have developed a strange melting pot. And in the last 10 years this melting pot has gained more momentum, and millions are coming here from disturbed and persecuted areas of the earth. Now, to many people, and to probably quite a few thoughtful persons, this influx is a problem. It represents a hazard. It becomes something that we have to cope with. But it also can very well mean that we are continuing to build up what might be termed an international nation. We are building up gradually through the years a concept somewhat like that of the Swiss, of peoples of all groups, all backgrounds, all races, being able to unite for the great purpose of fulfilling the destiny of the human being, rather than merely the political contrivances of physical leadership. So we have here now, more and more, a representative group of persons, that some of them are still not assimilated. Some do not even know what it is all about. Some of them are going to be very troublesome. But the plan of things seems to indicate to us that the answer in the end will be what is deemed to be right. The good will come. This is not, as Simon Bolivar said before, the great Latin American patriot, he said, America is not a country. America is an assignment of destiny. Now, people don't think much of assignments of destiny. We are all gravely troubled. We are all worried and frightened by situations which we find beyond our control. But if we are correct, and I believe we are, that there is a destiny that is beyond our own keeping, that man has the right to make mistakes, but he does not have the right to destroy himself, that no matter what happens, all things work together for good, Something, the greatest good of all, comes from the greatest labor of all. The greatest security is the result of overcoming the greatest insecurity. All the way along, we have had leadership that was wise and leadership that was not wise. But we gradually are beginning to wake up ourselves. Little by little, this country is beginning to take on the measure of its own destiny. It is beginning to think in terms of what the individual himself must do. It becomes more and more a matter of the fact that insecurity is causing us to restore the inner values of our lives. We have made a mistake, a bad one. We have believed that security was in the world, when in reality security is in the heart and the soul. There can be no security except that which can be earned or manifested from within the depths of ourselves. And we are being tempered by a fire of adversity, but we are not going to be destroyed. We are gradually going to find the answer that we know is an answer founded in religion, founded in spiritual values, in integrities, in morality, and in ethics. And we'll see this gradually developing right now in this world. Millions of people who not long ago had very little but superficial thoughts are now beginning to sense the importance of investigating, considering, enlarging, and improving their own inner lives and making new and gracious dedications to the common good. So out of the worst problem, we can perhaps come to what one of the old statements that was made, namely, that the greatest sinner makes the greatest saint. And we ought to be pretty sanctified pretty soon now. We ought to be well aware that, contrary to general opinion, innocence and virtue are not the same thing. Innocence is ignorance, weakness. The individual who is right because he doesn't know what right and wrong are. But with man, as Aquinas tells us, with his definite power of choice, innocence must gradually give way to suffering, and suffering in turn must give way to virtue. The end of all our striving is the transformation of ignorance into virtue. We must gradually strengthen character and escape from the tendency to regard our world as something that is more important than the perfection of our own natures. Worldliness is gradually coming to an end. We are not going to be able to maintain it much longer. Worldliness is the individual investing his hopes, his beliefs, his fears, and his securities in material things, the most fragile and impermanent of all. There is no permanence in this world. There is no permanence in the institutions that we build. Many of them do not even last as long as we do. There is no security in this material state of things. Security consists of the unfoldment of eternals and principles within ourselves. This unfoldment is now being stimulated as never before in history. We have never been in an emergency before in which it was more necessary to make constructive decisions. We may not make them immediately. We may have some more suffering to go through. But the plan of the ages will not be defeated. And that which we have suffered so long to learn is not going to be lost. According to our belief in reincarnation, the individual